continuing in the topic that he started saying that part of the idea that the Chodesh Elul is both a Chodesh HaCheshvan of the previous year. It's taking an accounting of the previous year, and this is done with great rachamim and so on. And also, it's not just an accounting of the previous year, but it's also a preparation for the coming year. So this impacts all the inyanim of the Rosh Tevis of El, which is including the three avodas of Torah, avodah gemilas chasadim, and the way tshuva enhances and makes the maisim tovim and meirim. Then we start explaining that even though there's the three kavim, the three lines in general of the avodah, but more specifically, or more klolistic, if you will, is the avodah of sur merav asei tov. Followed also, we'll soon talk about bakei shalom v'rod feu. What is the idea of sur merav asei tov? This is the last part that we've been learning now, is that first, we need to turn away from the ra bedakus. The dakus hara, the subtle ra, is not, we're not talking about a Vedus over here, doing something that's usher and so on, but rather we're talking about the physical in comparison to the spiritual, the body in comparison to the nefesh, even though the body of a yid is very holy, etc., as we'll explain. Still in all, the body in comparison to the nefesh of every single thing is considered a ra. So we need to have the sur mera, we need to turn away from the bad, and we need to go to take out the good, meaning that the bad is the delight in the physical part, in the body part of anything. And the asay toiv is the searching out of the good, the lisanig al Hashem, the good of the thing, the ruchnis and the chayis that's in that physical thing. That is what we need to focus on. So I don't know if we posted it exactly where we left off, but we left off on the fourth page, page Ches. I remember that part. I remember posting line 13, which is the second paragraph on the page. And that is, after we spoke about sur merav asei toiv in the subtle type of ra, and also he called it in the parentheses also the subtle toiv, there's also the level of bakei shalom. What's the idea of bakei shalom? So he says the bakei shalom builds on, and it only follows after the sur merav asei toiv. Line 13. Through this preface, through this introduction, but the bakei shalom, we come afterwards to the avodah of searching out peace. What is the idea of searching out peace? He makes peace between the bad and the good, between the physical and the spiritual. So first of all, there's in the person's own physical and spiritual, his own ra comparative to the good, which is hachel ma'ashalom shmana gufla neshama. The first piece he has to make is between his own body, even though we said everything has a body and a soul and everything, therefore everything has the bad in comparison to the good in it. But beginning the peace, the first stage is he needs to make peace in his own ruchnis and gashmis, meaning his own body and his neshama. Okay, do a teres Baal Shem Tov al pasuk, like it's known, the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov al pasuk is sirach hamer sanacha, when you will see the donkey of your enemy collapsing under its load, you should help it out, etc., etc. So first of all, the Baal Shem Tov explains, when one examines the materialism of the body, which is a play off the word chamoir, so that's what it means, kisir chamoir. When you examine, when you look at your chamoir, you look at your chumrius of the body, so then, azai ha'avoidahu liresh usanacha, kisir chamoir, you'll see seinacha. The avoida is to see that really the chaimer of the body is your enemy. What does it mean, your enemy? At least subtly. Like we explained before in the idea of turning away from bad. That the body and the physicality is called bad, only comparable to the nefesh and comparable to the ruchnis. So therefore, since comparable to the nefesh and comparable to the ruchnis, it's bad. So in that subtle form of what we're calling bad, there is also the need for that subtle form of hate. So he says, the hine hagam haguf hagashim shalish Yisrael heminyone kedusha. Also, the body and the physicality of a Jewish person are considered matters of kedusha. So therefore, to say that they are totally bad, you cannot say. And to say that they are totally something that needs to be hated, you also cannot say, because they are holy. Not only is the body of a Yid, but the Gashmis, whatever he possesses, to such a degree we find that the physicality and the material possessions of a Yid is considered valued and holy to such a degree. The Torah had pity on the Jewish money, as we'll soon explain where we see the evidence of that. The Indians have never been a gel cholechad Yisrael mebli habeit alma modim latzavoi. This is related to every single Yid, regardless of their state and situation. Even someone that finds himself in the lowest of levels, also concerning his money, the Torah had pity on. And now we're going to explain what specifically is the case that the Torah had pity on, and therefore we'll know that we're also talking about someone that's not necessarily on the highest of levels. So he says in line 27, therefore there's an actual hira in the Torah, directive in the Torah. That's a bias, top of the next page. That before a kohen comes to see if a house is tameh because of the tzaras of the houses, so the person is told to empty out, by Torah directive, to empty out everything in the house. Because once the kohen proclaims it tameh, so everything in the house becomes tameh as well. Why are we doing that? Kedei shaloi ligrim le'ibud mammon, so not to cause the person any loss. Now the question is, what type of loss are we talking about? The majority of items in a house that become tameh through tumas saras can be purified through different types of means, whether mikveh or whatever. The only type of item that cannot become purified is earthenware. It has to be broken. Now earthenware, I believe Rashi also explains this over there in the Psukim, that earthenware are of very little monetary value. Even so, even though it's a matter of very little monetary value, still in all, the Torah does not wish even that small amount of loss for a Yid to receive. And also we know that one of the reasons of tzaras has to do with a person doing something wrong, including tzaras of the houses. There's other reasons also, to discover the gold and silver hidden, but a different setup is the way the Rambam says. First, the person, if he has not changed his ways, his houses will become afflicted with tzaras, and then worse will become his clothing, and even worse his own body. But the point is that we're talking about a person who's not necessarily on the highest of spiritual levels. And even a person like that, the Torah takes pity on his possessions. So the last word on the top line, V'tama davar, what's the reason why Hashem had pity on the Yid's possessions? Since it's speaking about a Jewish person, even concerning his possessions, his money, his monetary things that he owns. it's even further distant from the neshama, even more so than the body is distant from the neshama. So it's even a step further. Even the body, in comparison to the neshama, we called it in a subtle form, we called it bad. Here we're saying a step further even. We're talking about his possessions even further from his neshama. Even that, chasa Torah, the Torah had pity on. Chasa daika, the expression that the Chazal uses, chasa, shuinin harachim, that shows on the idea of mercy. So we see, similar to what we were speaking about earlier in the Maimer, how it's the highest level, it becomes revealed, the mercy of Hashem, you give me this harachim, and so on. So, despite the fact that a Jewish body and even a Jew's possessions are part of the realm of holiness, still in all, in comparison to the neshama, in comparison to the ruchnius, it's bad. And therefore, Allah says in line 5, Allah Shafal became still in all, despite the value that Hashem gives to a Jew's material possessions even, and the Jew's body, the beginning of a person's avoida has to be turning away from this level of subtle bad. Should not want the physical delight in the matter to such a degree that he turns away from the bad of the physical item. Meaning the delight is something that he not only doesn't want it, he turns away from it. Sur mera. This is also the reason, because of this type of approach that a person is supposed to have to the physical. This is also the reason there's no need in breaking the gashmis haguf of the body through fasts and through afflictions, like the continuation of the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov on the pasuk, if you see the body, which is the chaymer of the person, collapsing under its load of Torah mitzvahs, don't afflict it more, don't fast, etc., don't break it. But the Baal Shem Tov goes on to explain, aziv taziv imma, you should surely help it, you should enable it to be able to still be able to do what it has to do without afflictions. So that means that there's like two sides over here. Sur mara, but not negating the body completely. He says in line 10, Ki im ba'ofen sheyesh etzloi kol inyan hagashmis. Rather, that he has by him the entire aspect of the physical. He doesn't get rid of it. The Torah tells the person, save your gashmis, empty out the house before the kohen comes to say that it's tummy. Ella, rather, shatayin shaloi munach baruch nishabedavar. His delight is invested in the spirituality of it. So, that's the idea of, like we said before, of doing good, like we mentioned previously. The Baki Shalom, until it becomes also the idea of searching out peace. So the next step is not just the Sur Merava Seitov, but past the Sur Merava Seitov is what the Baal Shem Tov wants. The Aziv Taziv Imay. That's the Baki Shalom part. So like you said, we have an introduction. First we have to know, turn away from bad and search out the delight in the spiritual. Once we have that basis and foundation, then you can have Baki Shalom. Kisim, Torah Baal Shem Tov Nizkeres Leil, at the conclusion of the Baal Shem Tov's teaching of before, that you have to surely help him. What does that mean? That the avodah has to be, there needs to be the body and the soul together. Even though he's turning away from the delight of the physicality, he is not destroying the body, he's not destroying the physicality, but rather, Shanasa Shalom b'neim, that peace is created between them. Until the explanation of the word Shalom from the word perfection and completion. That's not just that he's making a peace between the physical and the spiritual, but rather he's making it in such a way that it is in a perfect level. The Gashmis is reached its perfection. The the spirituality reaches perfection, because true perfection is not when we negate the physical, but when we harness the physical to the spiritual in a very simple sense. It's a lot easier, and that's why lahavdil, outside of Yiddishkeit, we see this as a more common thing. It's a lot easier to negate the physical and say, if I want to be spiritual, I need to leave the physical behind, destroy the physical, torture myself, afflict myself, fast, etc., etc. What's more difficult, and therefore a greater shleimus, a greater perfection, is, yes, we have the physical, but we have to make in that the dirub tachtonim. Yes, I have the body. I'm not breaking the body. The body has to be fully functional and fully healthy and fully taken care of. And at the same time, in that fully functional, healthy body, I need to find the soul of the matter. I need to find the spiritual. That is a greater perfection in the person's avodah. That shows that he's a greater master over his body than someone that the only way he could deal with his body is by breaking it. So that's also that way you make the shalom, when you make the peace between the guf and the nefesh, you reach a state of shleimus. Once we've explained sur merava seitoi bakish shalom, now he's going to the level of virod feu. So he says in line 19, from this level he comes afterwards to avoid. That's not just in such a way that he's searching out the peace, but rather, but even more so in a way of pursuing it. It's the idea of running and the rushing. What's the significance of, on top of all of this, having the level of running and rushing? This indicates that this idea, this connection that he has with Hashem, and searching out the spiritual, even in the physical, so this is in the most powerful will and desire. The fact that he is running is an indication, have a rotzledvar mitzvah, the Chazal say. Run to a matter of a mitzvah. Running to a mitzvah indicates the person's great passion for something and great excitement for something. Therefore, he cannot contain themselves, and they're running to it. And this is also even hinted in the word will, that wanting something and running towards it is really in the same shayrish. Rotzen is from the word rushing and moving at a great pace. Until the actual rushing of the soul itself, like it's explained in many places, being in Milos Harotzen concerning the quality of will over the other inner soul powers. The will is a lot deeper in the person. When we talk about the person that has intellect or has emotions, so then one can divide the two. They could say that there's the person, and the person possesses intellect. There's the person, and he possesses emotions. The person doesn't possess will. Will is completely identified with the very nefesh itself, with the very soul of the person itself. That's why in Lashon Kodesh, Chassidus always brings down that there's the concept of nefesh. The soul is used also for will. Ein nafshi ba'am hazeh. My soul is not with his people, because will and rotzen are very deeply connected. So when a person has the rodfehu, this means that this avodah of making peace between the Gashmis and the Ruchnias is not just something that, okay, I need to do it because it says in the Pasuk, so merav, asay toiv, bakesholem, I do it b'kabol soil. No, it's something that he's pursuing, he's rushing, he's doing it with the full force of his nefesh from the innermost level, even higher than the koiches pnimim, because of his connection with this. last two lines on the page, I say, now he's going to connect this. This was a Maimer said, the Chayel, Parskisova week. So now he's going to start connecting this with the period towards the end of the month of El, Chayel, and so on. In addition to the general avoid in the accounting. And how is he making the accounting? We said at the beginning in a mimer, in a way of mercy, in a way of compassion. That's why the month of El is called Chodesh HaRachmim. He doesn't do it in such a way that he gets all down and depressed or angry or upset, but he does it in a way of mercy, for that he's making accounting for the entire year. Sha'avra, that passed, top of page Yud. In such a way that he shows that he wants to, and he begins to pay back the debt through tshuva, like we mentioned before, that when a person takes out, takes items to sell on credit, and then comes the end of the year, comes time to pay it back, and he shows Hashem that he's willing and he wants to pay back, and he starts to pay back through the idea of tshuva. So then Hashem, in the days of Slichus, forgives the rest of the debt, and he gives us again in the new year, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, he gives us again on credit for the coming year. So he says that this idea, this accounting that a person does throughout the month of Elul, this occurs throughout the entire month of El. Chodesh HaRachmim, the month of mercy, and that the month of El is permeated entirely in the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy, from the Malch Besada, the way they are in a manner of a king in the field, as opposed to being, let's say, in the Mamorim he explains that the Yigim Mitzrachim is also Mizgal in Yom Kippur, but that which becomes revealed in Yom Kippur, what the Mamorim speak about, that's the king in his palace. Here, during the month of El, we have the 13 attributes the way they're revealed in the field. So, in addition to the entire month of El making a cheshbon for the previous year, there's also the accounting for the past year in more specifics, in the final 12 days of the month of El, that the final 12 days of the year begins with the Chayel, the 18th of El, like the statement of my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, in these 12 days of Chayel till Erev Rosh Hashanah, through Erev Rosh Hashanah, needs to be an accounting for the previous year. In a way of every single day, we take an accounting of the previous month. Beginning with the day of Chayel itself, that's the time when we take an accounting, but again, in a merciful way, not in a way of sadness, etc., for last year's Tishrei, or in other words, the beginning of this year's Tishrei. Well, and according to this beginning, that the type of way that we are making a cheshbon on nefesh on Chayel, since we are starting off the process of making the cheshbon, the accounting for every single month of the year, so that establishes a pattern, that establishes a tone. So with that beginning, that on Chayel the person makes an accounting for the Tishrei of the previous year, that establishes the tone, that establishes the mode and the way how he's going to make a cheshbon for the following days, Yutes El, Chaf El, etc. That's going to be an accounting for the other rest of the 12 months, how he's going to do on the Yutes El, he's going to do for cheshbon, and Chaf El for Kislev, etc., etc.